Here's a pattern that most organizations have never looked at directly. During business hours, when your team is fully staffed, when response times are shortest, when the experience is at its best, who is calling you? Most people with routine inquiries, existing customers following up, administrative calls, low to medium intent. Outside business hours, evenings, weekends, early morning, when coverage is actually at its worst, when voice notes and IVR are the most likely outcome, who is calling you then? Your highest intent callers. The ones who've done the research, made a decision, and are trying to buy to close it. The inversion between your coverage is best and when your best callers arrive, the gap is not a minor inconvenience. It's a systematic loss of your most valuable inbound demand. My name is Daria. I spend a lot of time looking at how enterprise organizations handle inbound calls, especially at the relationship between when calls come and what the callers actually experience when they do. The pattern I just described shows up across industries in hospitality, property, healthcare, professional services, insurance, and in almost every case, it's costing more than the people running the operation realize. Think about the distribution of inbound calls across a typical day. During business hours, say 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you get a range. Existing customers with questions, admin calls, repeat inquiries from leads who are still deciding, some new business, but spread across the day alongside everything else. Your team handles it. That's what the team is there for. Now think about who calls at 7 p.m. on a weekday evening or at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. This is not a random cross-section of your potential customer base. The people who call outside business hours have done something your daytime callers often haven't. They've chosen to prioritize this call. They're fitting it into the schedule that didn't have a room during the day. They carved out the time especially to make this happen. A working professional calling a hotel on a Tuesday evening is not really browsing. They already looked at the website. They compared the options. They called to close a deal with you. Someone calling a lettings agent on Saturday morning hasn't stumbled across a listing. They've been thinking about it. They have questions, and Saturday morning is the window they have to move this forward. A patient calling about a referral at 6:30 p.m. has been thinking about that call all day and finally free to make it. These callers are not your lowest intent inquiries. They're consistently among your highest. And in most organizations, they're consistently getting the worst experience. During business hours, when a new inquiry calls, they reach a person. Often quite quickly, the person can answer questions, check availability, take a booking, progress the conversation. The experience reflects the quality of your operation at its best. Outside business hours, that same type of inquiry, same level of intent, same readiness to move, calls and gets a voicemail box or an IVR menu or a phone that rings and rings and rings. Or in better cases, a nighttime manager who takes a message and says someone will call them back tomorrow, maybe. The experience they receive is your operation at its worst. This is the inversion. Your most capable coverage lands on your least motivated callers. Your least capable coverage or no coverage at all lands on your most motivated ones. It's not a policy decision that anyone made deliverably. It's a structural consequences of how most operations are built. Around staff availability, which tracks business hours, not around caller intent, which doesn't. But the outcome is the same regardless of how it happens. The callers most likely to convert are the ones that the worst shot at a good experience. In hospitality, this plays out in a specific and well-documented way. The 7 p.m. caller is calling about a booking. They may want a room for the next weekend. They may be inquiring about a corporative event. They may be a returning guest with a preference for a specific room type. They called at 7 p.m. because this is when they finished work and they're free to do it. What do they get? In most hotels, voicemails or an IVR that routes to a general night desk that isn't equipped to take complex booking. Or a night manager who takes a name and a number and says someone will ever call them back, potentially in the morning. By morning, the caller has often resolved the situation. Not necessarily with a competitor, maybe with a booking.com, maybe they found another way to book, but frequently the urgency of 7 p.m. decision moment has disappeared. The callback lands on someone who has moved on. The 7 p.m. caller was ready to book at 7 p.m. The callback at 9:30 in the morning is a different conversation with a different caller. I made a full video on the hotel after hours revenue gap. I'll link it below if you want the longer version with the numbers. The short version: one missed evening booking per day compounds in a significant annual figure, and it's almost entirely invisible to standard reporting. In property and lettings, the equivalent window is Saturday morning. Most working adults, the primary primarily market for the residential and commercial property, have limited availability during the week. Saturday morning is often the only time they can give property attention to a proper search. They find the listing, they like it, they have questions about the property or the viewing process, so they call. Who they reach depends entirely on whether the letting agent has Saturday morning covered. In most agencies, Saturday morning is sin. The office may be closed, calls route to a voice note or to mobile that may be answered, maybe not. The callback, if it comes, arrive only on a Monday morning. By then, the caller has spoken to 2 or 3 other agencies on their listing. The agents that answer on Saturday morning arrange the viewing on Saturday morning. The others are calling back into station that partially got resolved. Booking professionals calls about the property viewing in the evenings or on weekdays. After hours isn't an off-peak, it's a peak hours for the right buyers. The letting market is competitive enough that being available at the right moment is generally the differentiation, not a marginal one. In healthcare, the intent pattern looks slightly different, but dynamic is the same. A patient who needs to arrange an appointment, chase a referral, or ask about prescriptions, they often can't make the call during the working hours. 6:30 p.m. on the way home or after the kids are sorted is when they finally have a moment for that. What they reach in most practices, an out-of-hours message, a number of urgent clinical issues, not a path to complete an administrative inquiry that could have been handled in under 2 minutes. So they call back the next morning before work if they can. During lunch break, adding to the morning call volume that practice is already managing, creating the queue that drives the headcount conversation, building the backlog that start every week. The 6:30 p.m. call that went to the voicemail becomes the 8:15 a.m. calls that join the queue. The same passion, the same need, twice the handle cost. The reason this pattern is so consistent is that the call operations are almost universally designed around staff availability, and staff availability, for obvious reason, tracks business hours. Nobody decided that high-intent callers should get worse treatment. The system wasn't designed with that intent. It was designed around when people are available to answer phones, which turns out to be the most exact the inverse of when the most motivated callers are trying to reach out. The misalignment is structural. It doesn't get fixed by working harder or adding more staff to existing hours. It gets fixed by rethinking what coverage means, specifically where the coverage is defined by staff availability or by caller need. Most operations have defined it by the staff availability. The caller need definition leads to a different answer. The cost of this inversion is difficult to calculate precisely, which is a part of why it persists. The bookings that didn't happen, the viewings that were not arranged, the appointments that went elsewhere, none of that appear on your data as losses. They just don't appear as gains. The revenue that should have come in a simple absent with no records on why. What you can calculate is the size of this window. How many calls come in outside business hours? What percentage of those are inquiries rather than existing customer contact? What your conversion rate is on answered high intent calls, and what your average booking, viewing, or appointment value is. Those four numbers multiplied together and extended over a year give you the flow on what the gap is costing you. For most operations, the number is larger than expected, often significantly larger. The visibility gap is a feature of missed revenue, not a bug. It doesn't appear because the system we use to track performance were built to track what happens, not what doesn't. The core idea in this video is simple, but was making explicit. The callers most likely to convert are calling outside your peak staffing hours. The experience they receive outside those hours is consistently worse than the experience daytime callers get. That inversion, high intent, low experience quality, is where a meaningful amount of revenue disappears, quietly, without appearing on any of your reports. It's not a staffing problem, it's a design problem. The operation was designed around availability, not around when motivated buyers actually call. The fix starts with understanding what your after-call volume actually looks like in volume, in timing, and in the nature of those calls. If you want a structured way to think about that, the video I'd point you to in 5 Signs 1 linked below. And if you want to see what handling high intent after hours can actually look like in practice, there's a demo video linked below as well. Question for the comments. In your operation, which window do you think has the highest intent callers you're currently not reaching well? Evenings, weekends, early morning? What's your dead zone? Drop it below in the comments. Subscribe for more on this. New video is coming every week.